What's good, people? Samurai Lee here, back for another fight talk. We're a couple of days removed from the Anthony Joshua Charles Martin IBF World Heavyweight title fight. Obviously the card that went along with that at the O2 Arena, very good card. We're going to run through the fights now. Started off Macklin and Bryan Rose, great fight that was. You know, you've got two guys that I'd said I think would put on a good fight, two warriors, really good fighters, been around for a long time, and they didn't disappoint. You know, it was a back and forth fight, a lot of big punches thrown. You know, they looked a little bit weary at times, both of them. I'd say late on in the fight they both gave away a point, but it, you know, it didn't really sour the fight. It wasn't a dirty fight by any means. It was just sort of two guys who looked a little bit weary and a couple of stray punches, and a little bit of holding. So, you know, it wasn't a dirty fight. It was a good fight, a good domestic dust up. Everyone loves a good domestic dust up. I think we'd like to see a lot more of them in the future. Macklin walked away with a win, so he'll be looking now to move up in the ranks and move on for bigger fights. Bryan Rose, I'm not sure what you do with Bryan Rose now. Do you stick him around British title level? He's a very good middleweight, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure which route you take with him now. He wasn't outclassed by, you know, by any stretch of the imagination. He was very much in the fight and around Macklin, but you know, it's a defeat that's not really. It's not going to propel him. It's not going to do a lot for him. Some defeats you can come out of a fight and you know you can still be pushed on after a defeat if you perform really well. But I don't think that will happen with Rose. I think Rose may have to drop back down to British level more, and you know, maybe campaign for Commonwealth and European in the future. But it was a very good fight. It was a really good atmosphere in that one. They both brought a lot of fans, a lot of the Irish and Northern fans that come down to London for that. So yeah, really good fight, and one that I really enjoyed. We also had Jamie MacDonald defend his WBA bantamweight title against Fernando Vargas. You know, Jamie MacDonald, I said this on the build up to the fight, he goes unnoticed a lot. He's been world champion twice. He's been around a while. He's always in big fights for the division. The problem is they're not big fights when it comes to the British public. No one knows Jamie MacDonald. I think he's now good enough. It's time, I believe, to step up in weight. There's bigger fights up at the weight classes. You know, you got your Quiggs and Framptons. Whether Frampton moves up again himself is another thing. But up at super bantamweight, I think there's bigger fights for him, and there's more names, bigger paydays, and you know, for a world champion like MacDonald to be so low down on the card as he was on Saturday, you know, I don't think it says a lot about the division. If I'm honest, I don't think it's so much about him. The bantamweight division just doesn't create a lot of interest and a lot of hype. He boxed very well, MacDonald. He went through the gears. You know, he increased as the fight went on, and he got his man out of there, Vargas. He looked really good, and as I say, I'd like to see him in some bigger fights now. Lee Selby was another one, defended his world title against Eric Hunter, but it wasn't without a scare. He was knocked down in the second round. Very, very good shot that caught him from Hunter. So he did well to come back from it. He never looked. It didn't hurt him as such. You know, he was never out on his feet or anything. It was a bit of a flash knockdown. He got up and carried on boxing. And as the fight went on, he improved and he got back to what he does best. He boxed and moved, and he looked really good doing it. The referee didn't help Hunter out a lot. It was quite clear to me. You know, it was quite apparent that Hunter then got, you know, it started affecting him, and he started boxing a little bit, and he was a bit petulant with it, and he started changing his game plan and sort of huffing and puffing around the ring, and it may have affected it, it may have not. I don't think he did enough to win, regardless of what the referee thought of, you know, his a couple of the low blows and stuff. So he didn't do himself any favours, Hunter, but he boxes very well. He's a very good fighter, and he was by no means outclassed by Selby. But Selby's class came through later in the fight, and he increased and went through the gears as he needed to secure and to defend his title. So Lee Selby's still a very good watcher. Again, he's another one. I'm not sure what you do with Selby, because I think he's good enough to be fighting in the super fights and unifying the division, and I just want to see some of the big fights happen down at these lower weights now. Everyone's talking about the heavyweight division now, and you know, that's great to see the big heavyweights now finally being talked about. But the lower guys too, there's some great fighters down there, and it'd be good to see some big fights happen. Selby, MacDonald. I'd like to see those in some big fights later in the year. We had Conor Benn make his professional debut. I was really excited to see him, seen a little bit of his sparring and so on. Couldn't have been more impressed with him. He's got that ruthless killer instinct. Boyanov was a bit out of his depth with him, but once Conor caught him with that body shot, you could see Boyanov was hurt and he sort of walked away. He weren't getting any favours from Conor. Conor chased him down and threw him another one. He didn't protect himself at all times as you're told to do so. So Conor was well within his rights to chase him down and hunt him down like he did, and I thought he was brilliant. He was ruthless and he's got that bit of spite that you need at this level, and I think he'll go a long way. I'm looking forward to seeing his next fight. They're talking about maybe the end of May. I think they'll probably do with him what they did with Joshua every month or two. I'd get him around the country. I wouldn't just stick him in London. I'd put him, get more of a following, a little bit up north, down south, Wales, wherever Matchroom are going. I'd put Conor Benn on the show and try and get a bit more of a following nationwide for him, because he's a big talent and he's got the name to go with him, which it's a lot to live up to, but I'm sure he's got it. He looks to have it, and he's already talking about being a three-time world champion and surpassing what his dad did, and that's the kind of talk you need for these young, hungry fighters. So it's a good sign, and he's someone I'm really looking forward to meeting and hopefully see where he goes and progresses well. George Groves on the card, David Brophy. A lot of people wrote David Brophy off before the first bell, which I think was a little unfair. He was an unbeaten fighter. Alright, it was a big step up in class to go in with George Groves, a three-time world title challenger. And yeah, George Groves, his class shone through. The way he jabs, there's not many people with a better jab than George Groves. It's a vicious, it's a spiteful jab. It gets in your face and it puts you off your game plan. He moves. His body shots were excellent, and there's a lot of talk about his trainers, and he was with Booth and Paddy Fitzpatrick, and now he's with Shane McGuigan. Hopefully Shane can get the best out of him. George Groves is a big talent, and I think people writing him off is a little unfair. He's still a very good boxer, and I believe he'll still be world champion one day. Before that, there's talk of a big Martin Murray clash. I think that'd be an excellent fight. I'm a big Martin Murray fan as well as George Groves fan. I think that's a great domestic fight, and I think it'll be fireworks. They're different. You've got Groves who's a bit taller, leaner, and Murray who's stocky and powerful. It'd be a really good fight to see, and it's one of I don't think Callum Smith, by the looks of it, is going to be fighting George Groves anytime soon. So I'd like to see Murray against Groves. That's a fight that I definitely think makes sense, and it would be good to put that one together late in the summer and see how they get on. It'd be a nice fight. I like that one. And then we come on to the big one, the Anthony Joshua Charles Martin fight. Obviously Martin we knew he was a tricky southpaw, and it was his first defence of his title. Brave of him to come over to the O2 to London, to Joshua's hometown, to defend his title for the first time, but it ended up being I wouldn't say a walk in the park, but he didn't land a glove on Joshua. Joshua looked excellent. He stuck a move. He was moving. He got his jab. He was excellent. His jab was brilliant. I thought his movement was excellent. His head was always off centre line, so he was ready to throw those right hands straight after a slip, and you saw to devastating effect what it did to Charles Martin. So yeah, I mean, it's good to see. The atmosphere in the O2 was amazing, and it's somewhere that Joshua is loved and revered, and it's became his fortress, and it's excellent to see. And now he's world champion. There's a talk of all the big fights, the Furies and the Hayes. I personally would like to see him have one or two lesser fights first. I don't see the big rush for the big Fury fights. They're still going to be there, providing everyone still wins. We know Fury's got to get through the rematch with Klitschko, but I don't think Joshua needs to be rushing into these massive fights. We know he's going to progress, and we know how well and how quickly he has done already. But I'd like to see him have a mandatory defence first, and then from there on, we can see how it goes. But those big fights aren't going to go anywhere. David Haye should still, he's got Briggs apparently he signed to fight Briggs if they both win on his show in May 21st, where he fights the Cobra. So the Briggs fight will happen later in the year, which next summer or even early next year there could be a big fight of Haye and Joshua. I don't see the need to rush it and make it now. Let's get some other fights done first, some nice nice victories for Joshua, more ring time, because let's be honest, he hasn't had a lot of ring time in when you break it down. So I'd be more inclined to see him fight one or two more before going for the really big guys.
Big up to Samurai Lee Fight Talk, man. New on the block doing his thing. Bless.